And well, joining us to talk a little bit more about this is Bruce Harrison, who is in Seoul at the moment. And Bruce, thanks for talking to us this evening. Now, this is the first time a Chinese president is visiting North Korea since 2005, in 14 years. Give us a sense of how significant this visit is both for China and North Korea.
It is significant on multiple fronts. Number one, this reaffirms the strong alliance between China and North Korea. And in fact, this meeting comes in a year which is the 70th anniversary of North Korea and Chinese diplomatic ties. So there's some sentiment attached, and it's an opportunity for Xi and Kim Jong-un to go over what have been Kim's more recent goals since he has stopped testing nuclear weapons as well as missiles, and decided that he wants to focus on the economy, or at least what he's telling the world outwardly is that he wants to develop his economy. So we believe the Chinese leader is visiting in North Korea right now and discussing how they can continue to cooperate economically, possibly in terms of food aid as well, but within the binds of international sanctions, at least from China's perspective. As far as nuclear diplomacy, this is significant as well, because what we've seen up to this point was South Korea largely playing a role as a mediator between the U.S. and North Korea. The president here regularly encouraging Kim Jong-un and President Trump to hold talks, a reverse from diplomacy with on the nuclear weapons in the past. It's now a top-down structure, and it's Trump and Kim, and they think this is the way forward, but talks haven't borne any fruit. So now we have China's leader perhaps being the one to encourage Kim Jong-un and President Trump to continue these talks. And China may have some leverage perhaps, especially if there's any kind of deal that Kim and Xi can make, and then Xi travels to Japan where he meets Trump and says, you know, here's what maybe we can offer as far as the nuclear diplomacy, but concessions will need to be made, perhaps in terms of the trade war that's taking place between Washington and Beijing right now.
Right, and of course, it is often said that the road to denuclearization for North Korea passes through Beijing, considering that 95% of all trade North Korea does with the outside world is with China. Can Xi Jinping really nudge Kim Jong-un to negotiate with the rest of the world, particularly the United States?
That's true. That's what people have long said, that China holds the key to solving the nuclear issue on the peninsula because of its economic relationship with North Korea, and it has an ability to perhaps not transparently avoid some of the stricter sanctions internationally that have been applied to the North. By and large, or what China would like us to believe is that it is following the sanctions regime from the United Nations and other countries, but it's exactly unclear what the relationship is. So yes, they say China does have the power to make North Korea sweat. But ultimately, it's going to come between the U.S. and North Korea to solve this issue, because North Korea purports that the key threat to its existence is the U.S. military presence in the region, and that's why it says it believes nuclear weapons. And at this time, the U.S. is saying that it wants North Korea to give up its weapons program, then it'll ease sanctions. That's what we learned from the Hanoi summit. It's kind of an all-or-nothing approach right now. And it's unclear if Xi Jinping actually has the power to convince Kim Jong-un to make concessions for Washington at this time. Most experts have suggested Xi's not going to walk out of Pyongyang with something for Donald Trump that North Korea is willing to offer. At the most, he may be able to encourage them to sit down again, but ultimately it's a trust factor, and there's very little trust between Pyongyang and Washington. And at this time, what at least the leader in South Korea and Beijing seem to think is that Trump and Kim need to continue to hash it out at the negotiating table if there's going to be any progress.
Right, and do you think that President Xi, for the influence that he has over North Korea, will use it as a leverage in his negotiations with Donald Trump to get concessions in the trade war?
Another good question, and as I was suggesting, it's unclear if Xi Jinping is going to be able to take something from this visit in Pyongyang and bring it to Donald Trump when they meet at the G20 in Osaka. because ultimately you'll be between North Korea and the United States to have these negotiations about what parts of the nuclear weapons program it gives up in return for what kind of sanctions the U.S. is willing to ease. It certainly puts Xi Jinping in a better position than he was before, having what appears to be an even closer relationship to Kim Jong-un, especially at a time when Kim Jong-un's economy is struggling and the nuclear talks are struggling. So what does he do? Well, he turns to the old ally China. He turns to Xi Jinping, who he's already met 4 times previously, for possible advice and perhaps even, as you suggested, trying to draw some sort of a concession that could be used as leverage in terms of the trade war between the U.S. and China right now. But I'll say it again, it's unclear if Kim would be willing to give anything up to Xi to take to that meeting in Osaka and say, okay, this is what we're willing to do, but you have to step back on these threats of tariffs. Not only does China not want that, a lot of U.S. companies don't want that either, but it's really unclear, and experts are suggesting not possible right now that Xi would be able to directly leverage that in talks for the trade war. But we'll have to see what comes out of Osaka.